Kang Minho stared out the window of his small ship. In front of him stretched the biggest junkyard in the galaxy. Broken spaceships floated everywhere like dead fish in a dark ocean. Some were as big as cities. Others were just twisted metal chunks. This was the Titan machine graveyard, where the Great Galactic War had ended 300 years ago. "Tay, what do you see out there?" Minho asked his robot companion. The big combat robot turned its blue optical sensors toward the debris field. "I detect 17 salvageable power cores within scan range. Also 3 intact weapon systems and 1 navigation computer that might still work." Minho smiled. After 8 years together, Tay had learned to think like him. Most military robots just followed orders. But Tay was different now. He could make jokes, argue about the best places to eat, and even worry about Minho's safety. "Any other salvage crews nearby?" Minho asked. "Negative. The closest human ship is 47 kilometers away. They appear to be harvesting from a destroyed cruiser." Good. Minho liked working alone with Tai. Other salvagers talked too much and asked too many questions. They also tried to steal the best finds. In this business, you kept quiet and moved fast. Minho had been a military engineer before becoming a salvager. He knew how ships worked, how they broke, and what parts were worth the most money. The war had left behind enough technology to keep salvagers busy for 1,000 years. But the easy pickings were gone. Now you had to go deeper into the graveyard to find anything valuable. "Take us into Sector 7, Minho said. Tay's metal head turned toward him. "That sector has been marked dangerous by the Salvage Guild. Multiple crews have reported equipment failures and strange readings." "That's exactly why we're going there," Minho said. "If it was safe, someone would have cleaned it out already." Tay made a sound that might have been a sigh. Over the years, he had developed many human-like behaviors. Sometimes Minho wondered if Tai was more human than robot now. Their ship, the Lucky Strike, was small but tough. Minho had built most of it himself using parts from a dozen different vessels. It looked ugly, but it could go places bigger ships couldn't reach. The engines were quiet, and the hull was covered in sensor-absorbing paint. Perfect for sneaking around. As they moved deeper into the graveyard, the debris got thicker. Minho had to pilot carefully around floating chunks of metal and dead satellites. Some pieces were still radioactive from old weapon strikes. Others had strange energy readings that made his instruments go crazy. "There," Tay said suddenly. "Bearing 27 Mark IV. Large energy signature." Minho looked where Tai was pointing. At first, he saw nothing but the usual wreckage. Then his eyes caught something different. Deep inside a cluster of broken ships, something was glowing faintly. "Is that a power core about to explode?" Minho asked. Tay was quiet for several seconds, running calculations. "Negative. The energy pattern is stable but unusual. It does not match any known technology in my database." That made Minho interested. In 8 years of salvaging, they had seen almost everything. Tay's database included technology from 15 different alien species and hundreds of human ship designs. If Tay couldn't identify something, it was either very old or very advanced. "How big is it?" Minho asked. "Difficult to determine. The energy source appears to be buried under significant debris. Estimated minimum size is 200 meters. Could be much larger." Minho felt excitement building in his chest. A find this big could set them up for life. But big finds were also dangerous. The last salvager who claimed to find something amazing had disappeared along with his entire crew. "Any other ships heading this way?" he asked. "Negative. The nearest vessel is moving away from our position." Minho made his decision. "Plot a course. But keep us hidden in the debris field." Tay began working the navigation controls with his precise metal fingers. The robot had been designed for combat, but Minho had modified him for salvage work. Tay's sensors were better than anything the military used, and his reflexes could save them if something went wrong. As they got closer, the energy readings got stronger. Minho could see now that several large ship hulks had crashed together, creating a kind of metal cave. The glow was coming from deep inside. "Minho," Tay said in a worried voice, "I am detecting some concerning readings." "What kind of concerning?" "The energy signature is pulsing, like a heartbeat. But no known technology produces this pattern." Minho frowned. Pulsing energy usually meant something was alive or about to explode. Neither option was good news. "Could it be some kind of alien life form?" he asked. "Possible, but the energy levels are far beyond anything biological that I have recorded." They reached the edge of the debris cluster. Up close, Minho could see how the ships had crashed together. It looked like a small fleet had been trying to escape when something destroyed them all at once. The metal was twisted in strange ways as if it had been bent by forces that didn't follow normal physics. There, Tay pointed to a gap between two large hull sections. We can enter through that opening. Minho guided the Lucky Strike through the narrow passage. His ship's lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors made of crashed metal. It was like flying through the belly of some giant mechanical beast. The energy readings kept getting stronger. Soon Minho could feel it through the ship's hull, a deep thrumming that seemed to vibrate in his bones. Tay, are you picking up any communications? Radio signals, distress beacons, anything? Negative on standard frequencies. But I am detecting something on very low frequency bands. It could be a signal, but it is unlike anything in my database. They followed the energy source deeper into the wreckage. The passage opened up into a large space where several ship hulls had been torn open. In the center, Minho saw something that made him forget to breathe. It was a ship, but not like any ship he had ever seen. The hull was smooth and curved, like it had been grown instead of built. It was dark gray with veins of silver running through it, and it was glowing with a soft, pulsing light. Tay, Minho whispered. Please tell me you have this thing in your database. Negative. No match found for this design. The hull appears to be made of an unknown alloy with organic components. Age estimates suggest this vessel is significantly older than the surrounding wreckage. Much older. While the other ships were maybe 300 years old, this thing looked ancient. The design was so different it might have been built by a completely different kind of life form. Is it safe to approach? Minho asked. Tay ran more scans. No immediate threats detected. But I recommend extreme caution. This technology is beyond my ability to predict. Minho brought the Lucky Strike closer to the strange ship. As they approached, he could see details that made no sense. The hull had patterns carved into it that looked almost like writing. Some sections seemed to pulse with their own light, and at the front of the ship, something that might have been a window glowed with warm, golden light. Minho, Tai said softly, I believe this vessel is still partially active. That should have scared him. Instead, Minho felt more excited than he had in years. This was the kind of find that legends were made of, the kind that could change everything. He docked the Lucky Strike against the alien ship's hull and began putting on his environmental suit. Whatever was inside that ship, he was going to be the first human to see it. Are you certain about this course of action? Tay asked. Minho sealed his helmet and checked his air supply. Tay, my friend, this is why we came out here. This is what we've been looking for. The robot's optical sensors focused on him. Then I will accompany you. Where you go, I go, Minho smiled. That was Tay, loyal to the end. Together, they prepared to enter the mysterious ship and discover what secrets it held. Outside, the strange vessel continued to pulse with ancient light, waiting for visitors it had not seen for thousands of years. Minho and Tay stood at the airlock of the strange ship. Minho had cut through the outer hull with his plasma torch, but the metal had sealed itself behind the cut. It was like the ship was healing its own wounds. That's not normal, Minho said into his helmet radio. Agreed, Tay replied. The robot's voice was calm, but Minho could hear concern in his tone. The hull material appears to be self-repairing. This suggests advanced nanotechnology or biological components. Minho touched the sealed cut with his gloved hand. The metal felt warm, even through his environmental suit. Well, we're already here. Let's see what's inside. They stepped through the hole they had made into a corridor unlike anything Minho had ever seen. The walls were smooth and curved, made of the same gray material as the outer hull. But as soon as they entered, lines of soft blue light began to glow along the ceiling. Motion sensors? Minho asked, unknown. The light appears to be responding to our presence, but I detect no electronic sensors of any recognizable type. The corridor was wide enough for both of them to walk side by side. As they moved forward, more lights activated ahead of them, creating a path deeper into the ship. Behind them, the light slowly faded back to darkness. It's like the ship knows we're here, Minho said. That interpretation is consistent with my observations, Tay agreed. The vessel appears to be aware and responsive. They passed several openings that led to other corridors. Each one looked the same. Smooth walls, curved ceiling, and those mysterious guiding lights. The ship was much larger inside than it had appeared from outside. Tay, are you mapping this place? Affirmative. However, the interior dimensions do not match the exterior measurements. The ship appears to be larger inside than outside. Minho stopped walking. That's impossible. I have checked my sensors multiple times. The readings are consistent but illogical. Space warping technology was theoretical at best. Even the most advanced alien species humans had encountered couldn't bend space like that. Whatever built this ship was far beyond current galactic civilization. They continued walking. The corridor began to slope downward, leading them toward the center of the ship. The pulsing energy they had detected from outside was getting stronger. Minho could feel it through his boots now, a steady rhythm like a giant heartbeat. "Are you getting any life sign readings?" Minho asked. "Negative for any known biological patterns. However, there are energy flows throughout the ship that could be interpreted as neural activity." "You mean the ship is alive?" "I mean the ship displays patterns consistent with a living organism, though composed of unknown materials and energy types." They reached a junction where 5 corridors met. In the center was a circular chamber with what looked like a control panel, but instead of buttons or screens, the panel was covered in flowing patterns of light. Minho approached carefully. As he got closer, the patterns changed, becoming brighter and more complex. "I think it's trying to communicate." Tay moved to stand beside him. Suddenly, the robot's optical sensors began flashing rapidly. "Minho, something is attempting to interface with my systems. Is it dangerous?" "Unknown. The signal is incredibly sophisticated. It appears to be some form of communication protocol, but unlike anything in my experience." Minho watched as Tai's sensors continued to flash. The robot stood perfectly still for almost a minute. Then his head turned toward Minho. "The entity wishes to show us something. It is requesting permission to guide us to what it calls the message chamber." "Entity?" "The ship's consciousness. It is definitely artificial, but far more advanced than any AI I have encountered. It has been waiting for visitors who could understand its communications." Minho thought about this. An AI that had been waiting for thousands of years. What could it want to show them? "Is it safe?" he asked. "I believe so. The entity seems curious about us rather than hostile. It is particularly interested in our partnership, a human and artificial intelligence working together." "All right. Tell it we accept." Tay's sensors flashed again. Then new lights appeared leading down one of the corridors. They followed the path through several more passages until they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the ship. The room was dome-shaped and enormous. The walls were covered in flowing patterns of light that moved like living things. In the center stood a pillar of crystal that pulsed with golden energy. And floating around the pillar were thousands of small lights, each one containing what looked like moving images. "What is this place?" Minho whispered. "The entity calls it the memory core," Tay replied. "This is where the message is stored." Minho walked closer to the crystal pillar. As he approached, some of the floating lights drifted toward him. Inside each one, he could see images of alien beings unlike anything he had ever seen. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and faces that seemed to shift and change as he watched. "These are the ship's builders," Tay explained. "The entity calls them the architects. They disappeared from this galaxy over 10,000 years ago. What happened to them? That is what the message explains. The entity has been waiting for someone who could understand and carry the warning to others." One of the lights settled in front of Minho. Inside it, he saw images of planets burning, fleets of ships being destroyed by something dark and terrible. The architects were fighting against an enemy that seemed to be made of shadow and destruction. "They lost," Minho said. "Yes. But before they died, they encoded their knowledge and a warning into this ship. The entity has been broadcasting the message for thousands of years, but no one has been able to receive it properly." "Why us? What makes us different?" Tay was quiet for a moment, his systems interfacing with the ship's consciousness. "The entity says that most species rely either on pure technology or pure biological intelligence. Humans are unique because you have learned to truly partner with artificial intelligence. The message can only be properly decoded by a combination of organic intuition and artificial logic working together." Minho felt a chill run down his spine. "What's the message about?" "A warning. The force that destroyed the architects is still out there. It moves through the galaxy in cycles, destroying civilizations and then moving on. The entity calculates that it will return to this region of space soon." The images in the floating lights began to move faster, showing more scenes of destruction. Worlds going dark, stars being extinguished, entire star systems becoming empty and cold. "How soon?" Minho asked. Tay's optical sensors flashed rapidly as he communicated with the ship. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with concern. "According to the entity's calculations, the force will arrive in this galaxy within 6 months. It calls this enemy the Silence because wherever it goes, all communication, all life, all light stops forever. Minho stared at the crystal pillar. Inside its golden glow, he could see more images forming. Pictures of the threat approaching, moving through space like a living darkness. The architects tried to fight it with their most advanced technology, Tay continued. They failed because they relied too heavily on their machines. The Silence can turn any technology against its creators. But humans are different? The entity believes so. Humans do not dominate their artificial intelligence or let it dominate them. Instead, you create partnerships. This balance between organic and artificial intelligence may be the key to surviving what destroyed the architects. Minho looked around the chamber. All those floating lights contained the knowledge of an entire civilization. Their science, their culture, their hopes and fears, all preserved in this ship that had waited 10,000 years for someone to find it. We have to warn people, he said. Yes. But the entity says the message must be delivered carefully. Many species will not believe the warning, especially coming from humans. You are considered young and inexperienced by galactic standards. Then we'll have to prove it. We'll have to show them this ship, the evidence. Tay nodded. The entity is willing to help. It has been alone for so long that it wants to complete its mission before its power finally fails. Minho reached out and touched the crystal pillar. It felt warm and alive under his gloved hand. Images flowed through his mind. Scenes of the architects' civilization, their desperate last battle, and their final hope encoded in this ship. How long does the ship have? He asked. Perhaps a few years of full operation. The entity has been conserving power, but awakening to communicate with us has drained significant reserves. A few years to save the galaxy. It seemed impossible. But as Minho looked at Tai, he felt a strange confidence. They had found something that had waited 10,000 years to be discovered. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to use it. We should go back to the ship, Minho said. We need to contact the authorities. Agreed. But Minho, I must warn you. Once we report this discovery, our lives will change forever. We will no longer be simple salvagers. Minho smiled inside his helmet. Tai, my friend, I don't think we were ever simple salvagers. I think this is what we were meant to find. As they left the chamber, the lights began to dim behind them. But the crystal pillar continued to pulse with its ancient message, waiting for the galaxy to listen. Minho sat in his pilot chair, staring at the communication panel. He had been trying to decide who to call for over an hour. The discovery of the architect's ship was too big for normal salvage protocols. This was the kind of find that could start wars or unite civilizations. You could contact Park Ji-hoon at the Salvage Guild, Tay suggested. The robot stood beside him, optical sensors focused on the alien ship outside their window. He has always been fair in his dealings with us. Ji-hoon is a good man, Minho agreed. But this is beyond the guild's authority. We're talking about a threat to the entire galaxy. Tay's head turned toward him. Then perhaps military channels would be more appropriate. Minho had been thinking the same thing. His old contacts in the Colonial Defense Force might take him seriously. But once the military got involved, everything would change. They would take over the site, classify everything, and probably lock Minho and Tay away for their own protection. Let me try Ji-hoon first, Minho decided. He deserves to know what we found. Maybe he can help us figure out the best way to handle this. Minho activated the long-range communicator and sent a coded message to Park Ji-hoon's personal frequency. It would take several minutes for the signal to reach guild headquarters and for Ji-hoon to respond. While they waited, Tay continued to monitor the architect ship. Minho, I am detecting increased activity from the vessel. The energy patterns are becoming more complex. Is that good or bad? Uncertain. The ship's consciousness seems to be preparing for something. It may be anticipating the arrival of other humans. Minho looked out at the ancient ship. Even now it seemed to pulse with greater intensity. The golden glow from its central chamber was brighter than before. The communication panel chimed. Ji-hoon's voice crackled through the static. Minho, good to hear from you. What have you found out there? Your message sounded urgent. Ji-hoon, you need to sit down for this. We found something big, really big. How big are we talking? Intact cruiser? Dreadnought? Minho took a deep breath. Try alien ship with active AI that's been waiting 10,000 years to deliver a warning about something that's going to destroy the galaxy. There was silence on the channel for almost 30 seconds. Then Jihoon's voice came back, much more serious. Minho, please tell me you're not making this up. I wish I was. The ship is real. The AI is real. And the threat is real. We need help, Jihoon. Where are you exactly? Minho gave him their coordinates in Sector 7. He could hear Jihoon typing rapidly on his end of the connection. I'm showing 3 guild vessels in that area. None of them report anything unusual. The ship is hidden deep in a debris cluster. We're probably the only ones who could have found it. Minho paused. Jihoon, I need you to contact the military. This is beyond salvage operations. I'll need to verify your claim first. Guild regulations require confirmation before involving outside authorities. Jihoon's voice was apologetic but firm. I'm dispatching a verification team to your location. They'll be there in 6 hours. 6 hours might be too long. This thing has been waiting for someone to find it. Now that we have, it might not wait much longer. What do you mean? Minho looked at Tai, who nodded grimly. The ship's power is limited. Every moment it stays active drains its reserves. If we don't act quickly, we might lose our chance to understand the warning. All right, Jihoon said. I'll also send word to Colonial Defense. But Minho, if this turns out to be some kind of hoax or misunderstanding, it's not. I promise you that. After Jihoon signed off, Minho and Tai returned to the architect's ship. The consciousness seemed eager to show them more, guiding them to different chambers filled with information about the approaching threat. In one room, they found star charts showing the path of destruction the Silence had left behind. Entire sectors of space marked as empty and dead. In another, they discovered records of the architect's attempts to fight back, including weapons and defenses that had all proven useless. The entity is sharing its knowledge freely, Tay observed. It truly believes we represent the best hope for survival. No pressure, Minho muttered. They were in the ship's data core when Tay suddenly stopped moving. His optical sensors began flashing rapidly. What is it? Minho asked. Multiple ships approaching our position, guild vessels and military frigates. Minho checked his chronometer. It had only been 4 hours since his call to Jihoon. Either the guild team had moved faster than expected, or word had spread quickly through official channels. How many ships? 7 total. 3 guild salvage vessels and 4 military frigates. They will arrive at our position in approximately 20 minutes. Minho felt a mix of relief and worry. Relief that help was coming, worry about losing control of the situation. Once the military arrived, everything would change. We should return to the Lucky Strike, he said. But as they moved toward the ship's exit, the corridor lights began flashing in a new pattern. Tay stopped and stood still for several seconds. The entity wishes to communicate something important, Tay said. It has detected the approaching ships and is concerned. Concerned about what? The entity says that most species who encounter this ship try to claim it for themselves. They see only the technology, not the warning. It fears that human authorities might make the same mistake. What does it want us to do? Tai's sensors flashed again. It wants to form a deeper connection with us, a permanent bond that would allow us to carry its message even if the ship is destroyed or captured. Minho didn't like the sound of that. What kind of bond? The entity would transfer part of its consciousness into my systems, while I would provide it with access to human networks and communication systems. We would become partners, like you and I are partners. Is it safe? Unknown. The entity believes so, but admits this has never been attempted before. The process could damage my systems or change my personality significantly. Minho looked at his robot companion. Tay had been his partner for 8 years. They had saved each other's lives countless times. The thought of losing him or seeing him change beyond recognition was terrifying, but the alternative might be losing the warning entirely. What do you think, Tay? The robot was quiet for a long moment. I believe this is what we were meant to do, Minho. You and I have always been different from other human-AI partnerships. Perhaps this is why. Before Minho could respond, the ship shuddered around them. Outside, he could hear the sound of multiple vessels approaching. They're here, Tay said. Minho made his decision. Do it, form the bond, but be careful. Tay approached the crystal pillar in the ship's central chamber. As he reached out with one metal hand, the golden energy began to flow into his systems. His optical sensors blazed with new light as the ancient consciousness merged with his own. For several terrifying seconds, Tay stood motionless. Then he turned toward Minho, and his voice had changed subtly. The connection is complete, he said, but now there seemed to be two voices speaking at once. Tay's familiar tones and something deeper, older, filled with vast knowledge and infinite sadness. Are you still you? Minho asked. I am still Tai, but I am also more than I was before. The entity and I share knowledge now. I can access 10,000 years of memory and experience. Through the ship's hull, Minho could hear the sound of cutting tools. The military teams were forcing their way inside. We need to go, he said. As they hurried back to the Lucky Strike, Tay spoke with his new dual voice. The entity has given me the complete warning and all necessary data to prove its validity. Even if they destroy this ship, the message will survive. They reached their own vessel just as armed soldiers in environmental suits entered the architect's ship. Minho could hear their shocked voices over the radio as they discovered the interior. Unknown vessel, this is Commander Kim Sunwoo of the Colonial Defense Force. A voice crackled over their communication system. You are ordered to remain at your current position and prepare for boarding. Minho looked at Tay. The robot's optical sensors now glowed with golden energy mixed with their usual blue. What do we do now? Minho asked. Now we convince them to listen, Tay replied in his strange new voice. The galaxy's survival depends on it. Outside, more ships were arriving. Soon the hidden debris cluster would be filled with vessels from every major faction in human space. The secret was out, and there was no going back. Minho just hoped they could make everyone understand the truth before it was too late. Commander Kim Sunwoo was not what Minho had expected. The military officer was younger than him, maybe 30 years old, with sharp eyes and a calm manner. She listened to their story without interrupting, though Minho could see doubt in her expression. They sat in the conference room of her flagship, the CDF Vigilant. Through the viewport, Minho could see the architect's ship surrounded by human vessels. Scientists and military specialists were crawling all over it like ants. So you're telling me, Commander Kim said slowly, that this robot has merged consciousness with an alien AI that's 10,000 years old? That's correct, Tay replied. His voice still carried that strange dual tone. The entity known as the Final Archive has shared its complete database with my systems. Dr. Cho Young-ho, the military's chief xenolinguist, leaned forward. Can you prove this claim? Tay's optical sensors focused on him. What would you like to know about the architects? Their language had 14 different tenses, including 3 that described events that might happen depending on quantum probability. Their homeworld had 7 moons and rotated once every 37 standard hours. They discovered faster-than-light travel by accident while trying to build a better water purification system. Dr. Cho blinked. That level of detail would be impossible to fabricate. There's more, Tay continued. The architects left detailed records of their encounters with the Silence. I can provide tactical data, weapon specifications, and strategic analyses of every battle they fought. Commander Kim held up a hand. Before we get into military details, I need to understand what we're dealing with. What exactly is this Silence? Tay was quiet for a moment, accessing the vast database now stored in his systems. The Silence is not a species or a nation. It is something far worse. Think of it as a force of entropy given intelligence and purpose. It moves through the galaxy in cycles, seeking out civilizations that have reached certain levels of technological development. What happens when it finds them? Minho asked. Total annihilation, but not through conventional warfare. The Silence has the ability to corrupt technology, turning it against its creators. Defensive systems attack their own ships. Communication networks spread madness instead of information. Even simple tools become weapons of destruction. Dr. Cho was taking rapid notes. How is this possible? The Final Archive's analysis suggests that the Silence exists partially outside normal spacetime. It can manipulate the quantum foundations that make technology work. This is why the architects failed despite their advanced weapons and defenses. Commander Kim stood and began pacing. If this enemy is so powerful, how did the architects manage to build this ship and preserve their warning? By combining their consciousness with their technology, Tay explained. They created hybrid entities that were partially biological, partially artificial. This made them resistant to the Silence's corruption, but it also cost them their physical bodies. The ship we found contains the last remnants of their entire civilization. And now that consciousness is merged with you, Mino said. Yes, the final archive chose to bond with me because of our unique partnership. Most species either dominate their artificial intelligence or are dominated by it. Humans have learned to create true partnerships, and this balance may be the key to survival. Admiral Song Mire entered the conference room at that moment. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Minho recognized her from news broadcasts. She was one of the most respected officers in the Colonial Defense Force. Commander Kim has briefed me on the situation, she said without preamble. I need to know how immediate this threat is. Tay turned toward her. Based on the final archive's calculations, the Silence will reach the outer edges of this galaxy in approximately 4 months. It will take another 2 months to reach the core systems where most human colonies are located. 6 months, Admiral Song said grimly. That's not enough time to evacuate even a fraction of our population. Evacuation would not work, Tay replied. The Silence has consumed thousands of galaxies over millions of years. There is nowhere to run. Then we fight, the Admiral said. The architects tried to fight. They had weapons that could destroy stars, shields that could stop supernovas and fleets numbering in the millions. They lasted 3 days against the Silence. The room fell silent. Finally, Commander Kim spoke. If conventional warfare won't work, what do you suggest? Tay's optical sensors brightened. The final archive believes that human-AI partnerships represent an evolutionary step that the Silence has never encountered. By creating true symbiosis between organic and artificial intelligence, we might be able to resist its corruption. Might? Admiral Song asked. The theory is untested, but it is the only strategy that offers any hope of success. Dr. Cho looked up from his notes. You mentioned that other species would need to be warned. How do we convince them to take this seriously? That will be difficult, Tay admitted. Most galactic civilizations consider humans to be young and inexperienced. They will not want to believe that their own technologies are vulnerable. Minho had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up. The ship itself is proof. If we can get representatives from other species to see what we've seen, to experience the final archive's memories, that could work, Admiral Song said. We'll need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. There's another problem, Tay said. The ship's power reserves are running low. Maintaining the final archive's consciousness requires enormous energy. We estimate it has perhaps 6 weeks of full operation remaining. 6 weeks to convince the galaxy to unite against an impossible enemy. Minho felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task. What do we need to do? He asked. Admiral Song turned to face the viewport where the architect ship glowed in the darkness. We need to prove that this threat is real. We need to develop weapons and defenses based on human-AI partnership principles, and we need to convince every major species in the galaxy to work together. The final archive has extensive technical data, Tay offered. Blueprints for hybrid technologies that combine organic intuition with artificial precision. But creating them will require cooperation between humans and other species. Why? Commander Kim asked. Because humans alone cannot build everything needed, Tay explained. We will need Altarian biotechnology, Centauran quantum engineering, and vegan crystalline matrices. The solution requires the best capabilities of every major civilization. Dr. Cho shook his head. Getting those species to share their most advanced technologies will be almost impossible. They've been guarding their secrets for centuries. Then we'll have to find a way to make it possible, Admiral Song said firmly. The alternative is the extinction of all organic life in the galaxy. Minho looked at Tay, seeing the golden glow of ancient wisdom mixed with the blue light of his old friend. What does the final archive think our chances are? Tay was quiet for a long moment. The archive calculates our probability of success at approximately 12%. However, it notes that humans have a history of exceeding calculated probabilities through factors that cannot be quantified. Courage, determination, and the willingness to sacrifice for others. 12%, Admiral Song repeated. I've faced worse odds. What's our first step? Mignot asked. We send diplomatic messages to every major species, the Admiral decided. We invite them to send representatives to see the ship and hear the warning directly from the final archive. And we pray that enough of them listen. Outside the viewport, the architect ship pulsed with ancient light, carrying the hopes and fears of a dead civilization. Soon it would carry the hopes of the living as well. Tate turned to Minho. The final archive wishes me to express its gratitude. For 10,000 years it has waited in darkness and silence. Now finally its message will be heard. Let's just hope we can do something with it, Minho replied. The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, and it would be fought not with conventional weapons but with the power of partnership between different forms of intelligence, human and artificial, organic and synthetic, working together against the darkness that sought to silence all life forever. The Galactic Council had never seen anything like it. Representatives from 47 different species sat in the Great Chamber on Council Station, all staring at the holographic display showing the architect ship. But more impressive than the ancient vessel was the figure standing before them. Tay, the combat robot who now carried the memories of an entire civilization. Mignot stood beside his partner, feeling small among the assembled aliens. There were tall Altarians with their flowing tentacles, crystalline Centaurans that sang in harmonic frequencies, and massive vegan delegates whose rock-like bodies could live for thousands of years. Most of them looked skeptical. President Lim So-young of the Human Colonial Federation spoke first. Honored delegates, we have asked you here to witness evidence of a threat unlike anything our galaxy has faced before. Ambassador Zhang Wujin activated the holographic projector. Images flowed through the air, scenes from the final archive's memories showing the destruction of the architect's civilization, worlds burning, fleets destroyed, entire star systems going dark. Several alien delegates made sounds of disbelief. The Centauran representative, a being of living crystal named Resonance of Truth, spoke in chiming tones. These images could be fabricated. Why should we believe warnings from a species that has existed for less than 10,000 years? Tay stepped forward. His optical sensors now glowed with pure gold, the mark of his merger with the final archive. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made every translator in the room struggle to keep up. Because I am no longer merely a human creation, Tay said, I carry within me the complete knowledge and memory of the architects. I have experienced their desperate last days. I have felt their terror as the silence consumed everything they had built. He gestured, and the hologram changed to show star charts. Observe the path of destruction. The Gromari cluster, dead for 8,000 years. The eternal spiral, silent for 12,000. The silence moves in patterns, consuming galaxies and then moving on. Our galaxy is next. The Altarian delegate, Elder Flowing Wisdom, extended several tentacles toward the display. Even if we accept that this threat exists, what can be done? If civilizations far more advanced than ours could not stop it, how can we hope to succeed? Because we have something they lacked, Minho said, stepping forward. We have learned to truly work together, not just between species but between organic and artificial intelligence. Many of the delegates made sounds that their translators rendered as laughter. The Vegan representative, Ancient Stone Deeproots, spoke in a voice like grinding mountains. Humans are children. Your artificial intelligences are toys compared to our living computers or the Centauran quantum minds. Tay's sensors flared brighter. The final archive has studied every form of intelligence in the known galaxy. Most species either dominate their artificial minds or are dominated by them. Only humans have achieved true partnership. Prove it, Resonance of Truth chimed. Without hesitation, Tay reached out and placed his metal hand on Minho's shoulder. Suddenly, the holographic display erupted with data streams that flowed between them like living light. Through their bond, enhanced by the final archive's consciousness, they began to demonstrate something unprecedented. Minho's intuition guided the search through vast databases while Tay's logic processed the information instantly. The final archive's ancient wisdom provided context and understanding. Together, they created solutions that none of them could have achieved alone. Behold, Tay said, and the hologram showed new designs, weapons that used hybrid organic artificial intelligence, shields that adapted through partnership between biological creativity and mechanical precision, communication systems that could resist corruption because they relied on emotional connections as much as data. These technologies require cooperation, Minho explained. Not just between humans and our AIs, but between all of us. We need Altarian bioengineering, Centauran quantum computing, vegan crystalline storage, and dozens of other technologies working together. Elder Flowing Wisdom's tentacles writhed in what Minho had learned was a sign of deep thought. You are asking us to share our most guarded secrets. We're asking you to survive, President Lim said firmly. The silence will arrive in 3 months. We can spend that time arguing about who deserves what technology, or we can spend it preparing to fight. Ancient stone-deep roots rumbled deeply. Even if we agreed to this cooperation, 3 months is not enough time to build an effective defense. It is if we work together, Tay replied. The final archive has provided complete technical specifications. We know exactly what needs to be built and how to build it. But we need every species contributing their unique capabilities. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates remained skeptical. Others seemed intrigued by the possibility of new technologies. But gradually, a consensus began to form. It was Resonance of Truth who finally spoke the words that changed everything. The Centauran Collective will share our quantum engineering knowledge, but only if every species makes an equal commitment. One by one, the other delegates agreed. The Altarians would provide bioengineering. The Vegans would contribute their crystalline technology. The Zephyrians offered their gravitic manipulators. Even the isolationist ethereals agreed to share their dimensional folding techniques. Ambassador Zhang Wujin looked amazed. In 1 day, we've accomplished more cooperation than the Council has achieved in a century. Facing extinction has a way of bringing people together, Admiral Song Mirai observed. She had been monitoring the proceedings from orbit, coordinating the massive construction effort that was already beginning. Over the following weeks, the galaxy transformed. Ships from every species converged on key construction sites. Human engineers worked alongside Altarian biotechnicians. Centauran quantum specialists shared workspace with vegan crystal shapers. The artificial intelligences of different species began forming partnerships with organic minds, following the human model. Minho and Tai found themselves at the center of it all, their unique bond making them natural coordinators between different forms of intelligence. The final archive's knowledge proved invaluable, providing solutions to problems that had seemed impossible. It's working, Minho said one day as he watched a hybrid fleet take shape in the shipyards above New Geneva. The vessels were unlike anything ever built, part machine, part organism, with crews of organic beings working in perfect harmony with artificial minds. The final archive is pleased, Tay replied in his dual voice. It never imagined that its warning could lead to such cooperation. But even as the defenses took shape, dark news arrived from the galaxy's rim. Deep space monitors detected the first signs of the silence, communication blackouts in empty sectors, stars going dark for no apparent reason. 2 weeks ahead of schedule, Admiral Song reported grimly. It's moving faster than the final archive predicted. The hybrid fleet was still incomplete. Several critical systems needed more time for proper integration, but the silence would not wait. We launch with what we have, President Lim decided. It's better to fight with incomplete weapons than to die with perfect ones still under construction. As the combined fleet prepared to move toward the galaxy's edge, Minho stood on the bridge of the flagship, a vessel that embodied everything they had learned about partnership. Human intuition guided Altarian biosystems. Centauran quantum computers worked with vegan crystal networks. Artificial intelligences from dozens of species formed a collective mind while still maintaining their individual personalities. Are you ready for this? Minho asked Tai. The robot's golden sensors focused on the starfield ahead. Somewhere out there, the silence was approaching, an enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations across millions of years. The final archive has waited 10,000 years for this moment, Tay replied. Today, the architect's sacrifice will finally have meaning. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of every living being in the galaxy. Behind them, the construction continued, building more hybrid vessels and defensive systems. But the real test would come in the darkness between the stars, where the silence waited. For the first time in galactic history, organic and artificial intelligence would stand together as true equals. The war for survival was about to begin, and humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the ability to form genuine partnerships, would determine whether life itself continued to exist. The final archive had been right. In the end, it was not about having the most powerful technology or the strongest weapons. It was about learning to work together, to trust each other, and to face the darkness united rather than divided. As they raced toward their destiny, Minho felt a strange confidence. They might lose this battle, but for the first time since the crisis began, he believed they had a real chance to win. And in the deepest part of space, the silence waited, about to face something it had never encountered before, a galaxy that refused to remain silent.